Monitor Mpesa accounts to nab tax cheats. Tax body banking on data protection bill to access your account. Facebook, Twitter, PayPal, and Uber also targeted to raise revenue right here. Mark, let me come to you on this particular one. The commissioner is talking about the fact that they've realized that the informal sector isn't being taxed because they don't have bank accounts. So let's go to where they put their money. What do you feel about that? Because they know you might pay your mechanic or someone else using Mpesa. So let's go for that particular point.
Well, it's interesting that they will and should go there, and I'll tell you why they should go there. Because one of the things that is a big problem in this country is our tax burden rests on the shoulders of about 3 million Kenyans. So you can imagine 3 million Kenyans paying taxes for nearly 55 million Kenyans, give or take. Now, that is obviously imbalanced. It is not fair. Right, so even when the rest of Kenyans complain about corruption, they really shouldn't, because that tells you there's about 20 million Kenyans who are corrupt, not participating in building the nation, literally. And you can imagine, if we're able to raise 2 trillion from just 3 million Kenyans, if another 6 million Kenyans began to pay tax, then ideally we should be able to raise a bit more money and deal with debt a lot better. So I agree, they need to follow up on Mpesa. But this is the only caveat that I would give them. In a developing country, you do not want to tax those who are climbing out of poverty. And Absolutely. You need to be able to delineate that very carefully. You need to be very careful to protect small businesses, because you will find that the mechanic, out of 6,000 shillings, he charges 1,000 shillings for his services. Yes. So the taxable amount is 1,000 shillings. Absolutely. Now, if you're going to tax 16% and take away 160 shillings from him, or you're going to charge a corporate tax of 30%, you'll be landing in a lot of trouble. So you need to come up with laws that protect the guy who's coming out of poverty and your small and tiny, let me not even call it micro business, because there are businesses that are very tiny that you need to protect with all you can. Yes. So Mama Mboga, who's receiving money from Mpesa, you need to be very careful to make sure that how you are taxing her, you're not closing down her business, because she's already struggling. That's the only caveat that I will give them. Protect the guy who's coming out of poverty and protect the small and micro businesses.
Nerima, some people are talking about the fact that, okay, fine, you want to go for the Mpesa money, but the Mama Mboga, the mechanic, are saying, by the time you come and take and tax the little monies I have, what have you done with all of that other money? Because you can see, we've seen where our mechanics are working from. Clearly, the tax money hasn't gone in to develop that particular area. So they're saying, so you use the money that you have properly, then come for my 2 shillings.
Actually, that school of thought. It's actually quite annoying when you see how high taxes are, because we've not even talked about the internet charge that's also going to come through. Last week we talked about food and the kind of, it's mainly junk food. And now if we look at the services that they're talking about, I think they're still targeting mainly the middle class. And even if we say middle class, how much does an individual earn to be considered middle class? So in Kenya, apparently it's the same bracket between 20,000 and 100,000. Completely different. Right. Completely different. And we're taxing them the same. And I think that's an issue in terms of lack of creativity when it comes to policy legislation, and also considering the fact that we do not see our government trying to use every dime that they get. Right. It's almost a spit in the face. So we continue to take more from you, and then we do not account what we're using. And I think that is the frustration, because even when we're seeing that it's Uber, PayPal, things like that, it's still back to the middle class again. And even as Mark is talking here about, you know, being kind or having legislation that works for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, I have enough friends who have closed businesses because taxes are too high. When you do not even say you had a zero return, you are still fined. People have taxes of up to 150,000 gathered in 6 months. So it's almost like this country says, okay, start your own business, create employment, and on the other hand, it's saying, we'll make it so difficult for you to do that. So you're left in a limbo, and it's very difficult to, you know, ask people to pay taxes when the environment that we're living in doesn't even try to support them when they do.
Right, right. Ben, you are nodding your head.
Just a quick note. We also need to remember that nearly everyone pays VAT. Okay, because when you buy that soda, when you buy that beer, when you buy whatever, it's inclusive of VAT. So the tax bracket we're talking about specifically is income and business generated taxes, because you cannot ignore that 55 million Kenyans do pay VAT by and large.
Yeah,
right.
but he started the conversation with another kind of
No,
tax.
you see,
It
there's
wasn't that.
various
I
levels of
understand
tax.
Yeah,
that,
but for this
but
was
we were talking
specifically
about
income,
specifically this.
income
No,
tax.
I just needed to mention that.
Okay.
Sure, you can mention.
Okay.
You know, Jeff, Sir Winston Churchill once said that a country that believes that it can tax itself into prosperity is akin to a man who is trying to lift himself while he's inside the bucket using the handle of the bucket. That's exactly what we are doing as a country. I'll give you a scenario of why KRA needs to be very careful about this. For example, if I have a small construction ongoing right now, or I'm putting up, say, a house or whatever, and I have the foreman, and every month I give this foreman, say, 200,000 shillings to pay to the rest of the workers. That does not amount to an income to that particular foreman. So how are you supposed to tax him for money that is transacted on his Mpesa account?
Right.
What KRA needs to do is, Safaricom already established business numbers and those till numbers and all that.
Pay bills.
Those are now the people who are trading using Mpesa lines.
Right.
So if I have a pay bill number, say I sell coffee or I sell gazette, and I'm paid through a pay bill number, then we can discuss taxation on that. But if I give you today 100,000 shillings and tell you send to Mark 20, send to Nerima 15, send, how does that amount to an income?
Right.
How are you supposed to come into that? Secondly, you realize already, out of every Mpesa transaction, there is excise duty. I think it is currently at 15%, and then there is VAT. Every transaction. That is already paid by Safaricom. So this concept of taxing and retaxing and double taxing and triple taxing is not really making sense. What we need to agree is that before we talk too much about harassing Mama Mboga, who receives 100 shillings from the Sukuma Wiki I picked on Friday, and I didn't have cash on me, is let's focus on where the problem is. They're stealing and the pilferage.
Right.
Yeah, these Kimorer guys, and those are the characters we need to be talking about. Those are the guys, because we have continuously seen KRA publishing reports of the top taxpayer, especially in income tax. But we have billionaires who are politicians and who call themselves the captains of industry, and we never see them in that league. So what are these businesses that they run? There are people we have seen who own choppers and those kinds of things. Before they start harassing border guys who has received 100 shillings, let's focus on where the problem is.
Right.
The cheats and the thieves.
And let's do that. Let's talk about that, because even as they look for more money to from your accounts, whether it's Mpesa or bank account, they'll take that money and probably put it in a project. Let's say a dam, for example. They'll spend over 20 billion Kenya shillings and then realize down the line that, hold up, the feasibility study we did was 28 years old. This is on a line of fault. Let's stop and see what's going on here after the fact that the money has been paid. And that's in the Daily Nation. Dam scandal details that shocked Uhuru. Taxpayers have forked out 22 billion shillings, and chances are that it will never be recovered. This is on the Daily Nation's front page. And this is what bites me. Very short comments as we move along, because Kenyans, okay, fine, you've stopped the project. We're all well and good with that. But what Kenyans were asking after the president said that, Kimorer won't go on, are we getting the money back? So when we hear it won't be recovered, therein lies the fault. How do we get the money back, Ben?
No, actually, and I've been on record insisting on this. People will begin only to take the president serious on the war on corruption when Rotich goes to jail. He is the architect and the face behind this level of impunity. Rotich subjected this country to a lot of investment in moribund projects, because I am on record insisting. The president relies on advisories to be able to run government. The primary responsibility of any national treasury is to be able to formulate economic and fiscal policy for every country. So even before these kinds of projects are presented to the cabinet, at the treasury level, the Rotich has technical experts in all these fields to be able to establish the viability of some of these projects. I'm again on record indicating that one of the biggest reasons why a treasury needs a sound individual, like we had David Miraria during the Kibaki tenure, is every ministry and department has this tendency, like Balala to embark on any manner of projects without a care, because all they want is to get better budget allocations. It is the treasury that's supposed to maintain sanity. So even before any payment was paid to these conmen from Italy, Rotich should have been able to demand and see and have a technical team at his level evaluate the feasibility study. That never happened. So until we see these people going to jail, this war on corruption remains a circus. And Kenyans have continued to. In fact, if we were to audit the projects that have been undertaken by the Jubilee administration since 2013, you'll be shocked at the amount of trillions we have lost that have gone completely to white elephants. And as I've indicated, the president now has an opportunity. These 3 years are enough, because he'll not need anybody's vote in 2023. Afungia watu wote waende. And we need now to seriously see people going to jail. If Rotich cannot show us where the money is and his cronies in that entire framework, let them go to Kodiaga, let them go to committee, and let them spend the rest of their lives there.
Nerima, yes. As you can hear, Ben has said this before. He has called him an economic hitman as far as the CS Rotich is concerned, and a terrorist at that. And even as we wait for the convictions to be carried out, most people just want to see the money. That at this point, they're like, okay, fine, do whatever you want with the corrupt individuals, but let's just get the money back.
I think it's more than that, because even if we get the money back, it doesn't stop people from doing it again. We're not really learning the lesson here. And that's where I agree with Ben in terms of there needs to be political goodwill and coming from the highest level of the top. Without that, then there's nothing about fighting any corruption in this country. And I think talking about money and getting it back from even countries overseas, we're not talking about billions upon trillions. We've seen countries coming and making agreements with our Kenyan government. And they think that's a step ahead, because our country is saying that this is corrupt money and we want it to come back to our country. But it still begs the question as to who put it there and what are we holding them to. It's like you slap someone on the wrist and say, do not do that again, but then they don't really learn anything from that lesson. And even as you look at this, as every single issue as a country goes, it takes a political angle every single time. And Senator Murkomen came out and spoke about this as well. He said the people of Elgeyo Marakwet still want this project carried out. The technical committee that was put in place didn't have regional balancing. There wasn't ethnic balancing therein as well. And he implored the president to rethink that particular decision. He said the committee actually misadvised the president, Mark.
My dear Senator Murkomen, let me give you logic, not advice, logic. Common sense. 1 + 1 in Kikuyu land is the same 1 + 1 in Kalenjin land. You do not need regional balance in a technical committee. If we go down that route, we will not do weather forecasts in this country, because a weather forecaster will appear and will check their name and say, you said it will not rain in Kisii. You are not a Kisii. You have no right to say it will not rain. Because will the technical committee change that there's a fault line there? Will the technical committee change that you need to pump water into that thing? What competence do you have by reason of tribe to say that now you can contribute to a technical committee? If Murkomen was arguing based on facts, on economic and scientific facts, we would give him the time of day. But this idea that everything must have a technical committee, so now when census results will come out, will we check the Director General of KEBS, of Kenya Bureau of Statistics, and say, come on, you have the wrong tribe to tell us how many Somalis and how many Maasais are there? It's mathematics. And this is the kind of nonsense that we keep tolerating. Number two, what will the people of Kimwarer and Aror gain when we build a wall over a seasonal river that will never be full? What will they gain? Lastly, this is not a people of Aror and Kimwarer dam. It is a Kenyan dam. Why is it a Kenyan dam? Because it affects people upstream and it affects people downstream. It even affects Egypt. So you tell me, why should the people who are to be consulted only the people from that locality? Because just because power is generated somewhere, so Kenya Power is only interested in the people of that area. Secondly, the money that was put in, did it come from the Kimwarer tax collection service? Was it only collected in Kimwarer? So that we argue that if it's being wasted, it should only be wasted in Kimwarer. Last point, which of you, when you get conned, when you are buying a car, then you do a logbook search, you've paid 100,000, you find that the logbook does not belong to Nerima. okay, and she's been conning you. Now, will you say, so that you have a proper case, let's pay her the rest of the 2 million, then we go to court? Which one of you would continue to pay? The Ravenna has declared itself bankrupt. We've given them 4 billion shillings. All we have to show is towels and people riding in double cabin trucks in the Eldoret. Then you are arguing that we give the same con people who are bankrupt more money. How?
And as we wait to see, as
seriously,
shocked as
how?
you are, the president is shocked as well. And the question was asked, because even at the very beginning, due diligence would have proven that
Yes.
if indeed you're bankrupt and you can't carry on your business, how are we giving you more money for any project? And that's why, as a nation,
There's
seething in
a very
anger.
dangerous trend we have in this country. Like now, you have seen a case of KDF procuring some 6 choppers, I think, for 140 billion shillings. You just need to go to Google. You don't need to be an expert or an aeronautical engineer to understand that it's a ripoff from this stage. So there has been this tendency. And I've kept questioning, like currently the entire security system from the KDF and the Interior Ministry and the departments there to NIS and all that. Currently they are working with a budget of an excess of 400 billion shillings this financial year. What is that money for?
Right. There always it's national security.
So there's this concept whereby budgeting in this country has always been driven by the intention to steal, not the intention to add any value to Kenyans. These 140 billion shillings, yet we are continuing to see cases of Kenyans dying from basic starvation. We are seeing Kenyans dying from lack of basic healthcare in facilities. Here we are haranguing with the doctors and teachers that we can't afford their salaries. Why don't we spend even better in terms of improving the terms of service of police officers than just a few individuals at KDF stealing from Kenyans 140 billion shillings in the name of buying revamped in the name of revamped helicopters. I have seen a scenario here of the MP for Kiambaa, Koinange, calling for the dissolution of Nairobi, and is the chairman of the security committee in Nairobi. At this stage, can he come to Kenyans and explain as to the justification for this acquisition by KDF? There are no 6 choppers that can cost 140 billion shillings anywhere on this planet. You just need to Google.
Right. And even as you talk about that, because you've spoken about the KDF, you've spoken about the whole security apparatus, and that was something we were to speak about today, because last weekend marked 6 years as far as Westgate attack was concerned. And what struck me was on Saturday, I was actually in Westgate at the time.
Yes.
And like I was telling you guys as we went into the break, it was just a day like this, people minding their business, and out of nowhere, something that changed the national psyche in terms of terrorism, for some people, losing life, their friends, their loved ones, injuries as well. Yes. Ben, you were there as well.
Yes, I was.
On that particular day when it happened. And when you look at it now, 6 years down the line, what are the lessons we've learned as a country moving forward?
Foremost, I think it is, it is one thing reading about an incident like that. It is actually one thing hearing about it. But when it comes to you firsthand, then it becomes a totally different ballgame. There was really nothing specific or special about me that I never lost my life. I survived with a bullet injury. We lost 71 Kenyans in that incident. And it is an incident that keeps replaying in my mind. I've been to Westgate actually even since the reopening and to many malls. But there's only one challenge. Back in I think it was in 2014, there's a documentary that I think was done by this particular media house on the security lapses we have. And you remember one of the reporters was able to be walking into malls with a gun strapped at her back. If you check, actually, there's a documentary that was aired. And unfortunately, that scenario has not changed. We have had this habit of knee-jerk reactions to incidences, whereby in the event an attack occurs, suddenly everybody seems alert, and everybody, even if I'm walking into this building, suddenly the security guy is very alert. Then a week or two down the line, that changes. Actually, that is my biggest problem with what we have never learned from Westgate, because if we were taking security seriously on everyday basis, it's not an event whereby it's a one-off kind of a thing. And we need also to be able to intensively retrain our security, especially our private security guards. There's already an initiative by the Private Security Guards Authority that is currently under some a friend of mine who currently based at the OP. And one of the key things I believe is there is need for retraining so that they're not only able to detect, but also to understand, to prevent. I keep walking into 5-star hotels and I ask them, yes, now you have scanned me with this thing. So suppose you find me, I'm strapped with explosives around my body. What can you do?
Right.
That's a very pertinent questions Kenyans need to be able to. Like downstairs here, if I walk in and already I'm strapped with a vest of explosive, what is that guy able to do down there to deter me from accessing this place and also to be able to immobilize me?
And it's not only about different premises that people are walking into within the city, but people have also spoken about the porous borders that we have, what's coming in that particular regard. What do you think as far as the state of security in terms of a national outlook? Are we learning these lessons, or does it get heightened because of an attack, and then after that we go back to our old ways, Nerima?
It does get heightened, and actually Nairobi or Kenya Nairobi is one of the cities where you travel to and the most you see is metal detectors. Every time I go to another country, it hits me just how it's become part of our everyday life, and it's not normal. It's actually not normal to always have fear and insecurity. But I think what has changed in a sense, I wrote a column about it, between the difference between Westgate and the Riverside attack, is the individual who was the terrorist has also changed. What we're seeing is that now they're university students, they are now born, raised Nairobi, Kiambu, and that's changed. And the fact that even when we talk about preventive measures, we're not considering how we can prevent young people from entering extremism.
Right.
And that's my concern, even though when we talk about CVE and the amount of resources being poured into countering violent extremism, we look at areas like Majengo, we have these places where people say that's where, those are the hot spots and things like that. But then when it comes to interacting with these young people and creating an environment that doesn't force them into extremism, or trying to create spaces of information and safe spaces. I was involved in a stakeholder kind of mapping when it came to youth engagement in countering violent extremism. And there is a gap because most of the conversation wasn't about youth.
Right.
It wasn't. We talked about women, mama mbogas, leadership. I mean, we talked about everything else
other than
the youth.
Right.
and that to me, and this was last year, and that's the current map for Nairobi. And that to me was just a red flag of the different maneuvers that we're using to counter extremism.
Right. Mark, 6 years on this particular issue, have we learned the requisite lessons to prevent that from ever happening again, not only from a security standpoint, but like Nerima has said, now it's taking a different form and face. It's not the usual person who you'd have assumed doing this. Are we moving in the correct path?
Well, the truth of the matter is that poverty, lack of opportunity does have a direct impact on young people participating in dangerous activity. In the United States, it's joining gangs, the Bloods and the Crips and things like that. In Europe, it is the British declaring their own youth a national disaster. So yes, there is a definite link there. But as Kenya improved, yes, it has. Remember there was a time where we used to hear in Isili there is a grenade attack and whatever. Nearly every month, those cases have gone down. If you look at the distance between Westgate and the Dusit attacks, you realize the time has been much longer. And number two, the way they perpetrated the two events is totally different. Who they used is totally different, which means they're under pressure to use different means. And that is credit to our intelligence service, that is credit to our army, which is based in Somalia. That is also credit, by the way, with our political linkages to the people of Jubaland in Somalia, because you cannot downplay the buffer zone that Jubaland plays in protecting this country. So there's a lot that has gone through that, both in terms of soft power, in terms of how we engage with Somalia, but also in terms of intelligence and things like that. Yes. What we desperately need to do, and it's just about terrorism, it's about young people in this country, is to begin to inculcate a culture of hope. And what do I mean by a culture of hope? It is very depressing for young people to know that every rich person that you know has been a thief. And the message then you give young people is that you've got to find your own way of criminality to be successful. Because let me tell you, one of the theories that I have, and I'm not a professional in this, is that a lot of these young people who join terror organizations join it because of the money. And I'll tell you why. If you look at the Mpesa amounts that were transferred in those accounts during the Dusit attacks, we were talking about hundreds of millions. So you can imagine, this person is thinking, I am 26 now, I will join and it will take them 10 years before they send me on a mission, and my family will be rich because of that. We cannot forget the money angle and the depressed angle of the youth that leads them to violent extremism.
Okay, fantastic stuff. Because of time, we have 2 minutes to go. Your good, bad, or ugly. We shall start from Mr. Ben and work our way down.
Yes.
Good, bad, or ugly for the week.
My ugly still remains that we have not made sufficient progress in terms of really addressing the challenge of terrorism. Although, as Mark puts it, actually, we have really made progress, especially on intelligence services. I wish we could invest more now on focusing on the economic terrorists. And even to build up on that, my good would be the emergence of the Nairobi governor. People are speculating that he's been or he's gone into hiding, which is a falsehood, and you've continued to see alarmist headlines in the usual dailies.
Right.
Yeah, but Nairobi is still moving forward.
Right.
And Nairobi is under wrap. And very important to mention, especially the issue of the call for audit, especially in the planning department in Nairobi County. That's another area we have economic saboteurs and terrorists in this country. We have continued to see very many Kenyans dying from funny buildings that are approved, and the governor must be able to stamp his foot and ensure that that department is cleaned up.
Okay, Nerima, you're good, bad, or ugly?
I have good.
Okay.
I have good, two goods. Last week was amazing. On Tuesday, saw youth coming out on the National Youth Council, pushing for amendments to that. And also on Friday, Climate Change Friday.
Right.
The climate strike that was led by Greta Thunberg. I think that was amazing. In Nairobi, we had about 1,300 youth come out.
Right.
So it just means that there are youth out there who are doing something about changing policy.
Right.
And that was all great for me.
Fantastic stuff, and pretty opportune since we have the climate summit this week. So now they know that the youth are watching. They said that the old are dying of old age, the young will be dying because of climate change. So that was definitely a good. Your good, bad, or ugly, Mr. Mark, as we wind up?
Good has to be that Kimwarer was cancelled. That means we're not wasting money. The bad and the ugly is the church, that they've decided that some people are flies and others are bees. And this is coming from a bishop, that you can stand, look at the country and say, because of your own political convictions, which you've had from whichever god, mostly the god of money, that you've had from, you've decided that Kenyans are bees and flies. And I'll remind him that when Christ was on this earth, he was called Beelzebub. Beelzebub means Lord of the Flies.
We leave it on that religious note as always. Mark always throwing a spanner into the works as we end things. Thank you so much for making time this morning. Mark Bichachi, political analyst, Nerima Wako, executive director at the Siasa Place, and of course Ben Mulo, governance expert. We shall take it from there, Lord of the Flies, when we come back, of course, next week right here with this great panel. We take a short break. We're back, of course, as we get interactive. This is K24 This Morning.